All right, bonus pod for you here. We just got done finishing up an hour and 15-minute podcast talking starter sit, and then we get the news that the Titans and the Steelers are postponed. So, guys, what do we know right now? What do fantasy managers need to know?
Well, we know that they're not going to have Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, Jonnu Smith. You're not going to have Ben Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner. So you have to adjust. And this is basically now the Steelers and Titans bye week. At least that's the way I would anticipate it being ruled. And so we have to figure out when this game is going to be replayed and how to adjust your schedule moving forward. But the good thing is that you can prepare for this before the Thursday night game to get guys into your lineup and have replacement options, as opposed to if it would have been after Thursday or certainly, closer to the weekend where you don't have the chance to make some waiver wire moves.
If you have not, and I suggested this offseason, not specifically for this purpose, but kind of for this purpose, I suggested that your waivers should run on Tuesday night / Wednesday, and then it should be first come, first serve for the rest of the week. And I know Adam kind of hates that. If you chose not to do that and you're listening to this before the Thursday games, you should make it first come, first serve today. If nothing else, just for today, so people have a chance to go pick up those Thursday night players to start them in place of their Steelers and Titans.
Like who? Who's available that you'd actually start tonight?
Well, I mean, you may have to get pretty desperate in this situation. There are
Frank Gore is not bad in a game against a Broncos defense that's down Jarrell Casey, and he's getting a lot of work for what we're looking at. Right. You're talking about, I still think Jeff Wilson is going to have a role as long as Raheem Mostert doesn't play for the 49ers. There are a lot of receivers you can find. Greg Ward is going to get a lot of targets for the Eagles with most likely no Alshon Jeffrey and no Deshaun Jackson. And even if Jeffrey does play, he is rostered in 20% of leagues. There's, I'm trying to think of just
Hunter
Renfrow, Cole Beasley, two wide receivers you could find that are probably going to get a lot of targets. Robert Tonyan, if you're looking for a tight end replacement, has scored in 2 straight games and is facing the defense that allows the most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. So there are guys out there for you. And obviously you're looking at no Roethlisberger and no Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Fitzpatrick is in a great spot against a Seattle defense that's miserable. Teddy Bridgewater is probably going to be throwing a lot in a matchup that hopefully he has more than one touchdown. So Nick Foles is now a starter for the Bears and just came off a 23-point outing where he didn't even start the game. It's a tough matchup, but again, you're stuck. So this is the nightmare. And, the fact that it's happening without, prior to Tuesday when you run waivers, but it's also prior to the games being played. So you have the entire rest of the slate to go find some scraps that can hopefully get you by. And you're probably not the only person dealing with this. We're talking about, 6 to 8 guys that are really fantasy relevant in a lot of cases. Some great receivers in Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster, and for what Corey Davis has been, 2 amazing running backs in James Conner and Derrick Henry, and at least 2 good quarterbacks for what they've been fantasy-wise.
Heath, do commissioners need to do anything? Do we need to give some IR spots, or do we just say, hey, this is a bye week, you got to deal with that?
That's the thing that we don't like. I wish that we'd gotten the announcement that seems there's a pretty easy fix, that you move the Steelers bye week 1 week, have them play the Ravens that week, and then the Steelers and Titans have the same bye week and they would play then. If we got the announcement that was what was happening and this was definitely the Steelers bye week, then I would feel pretty okay with just saying to fantasy managers, this is their bye week. You don't get any extra IR spots. We've not heard that yet. If it's some solution other than that, and they're still going to have a bye at week 7 and 8 this year, then I think that we would need to allow, not necessarily add extra IR spots, but allow people to put Derrick Henry in an IR spot for this week. And it depends on how you've set it up. Most of our leagues are set up to where you don't have to be on IR to be on an IR slot. Some of them require it. Some of them don't, because some guys who are out are just okay on IR.
And this is where there's a little bit of a loophole with all of this, because as far as I understood it, and if you guys understand this differently, please explain it to me. I thought if you were in contact with anybody that was considered tested positive for COVID, you were supposed to be put on the COVID list, which obviously would lend itself to believe that the entire Titans organization has come in contact with somebody.
It depends on the proximity. That's why they have these chips where they're monitoring GPS basically.
Well, the total now is, and we are in full disclosure, we are recording this as it's unfolding. Like we got off, like you said, we got off the air, and Trager said to us, let's do an emergency podcast. So in the time that we started and just until now, both Tom Pelissaro and Adam Schefter have tweeted that it's 2 more positive tests this morning. So now it brings the total to 11 within the organization, 5 players and 6 employees, including some defensive assistant coaches. So what that could mean is, like, Derrick Henry, for example, could have, and I'm just speculating, could be one of the 5 players. If that's the case, he's going on the COVID IR list, which means now you could place him in an IR spot, even if he's on his bye week.
But we may not know. And
I would just say that any rule, like, and again, it's going to depend on your league settings, but any special ruling a commissioner is making for Titans players should be made for Steelers players, even though they've not been exposed to what's causing this delay. Their game is being delayed for the same reason.
I do think you make an important distinction of being able to put someone on that IR spot as opposed to adding IR spots, saying, okay, well, you already have Christian McCaffrey on IR. I'm sorry, we don't have enough IR spots. You're out of luck. Each commissioner can make up his or her own mind, but there's 2 ways to go about it. You could add spots, or you could just say this person's now eligible for one of your already existing IR spots. And then I think in terms of the CBS leagues, if you're the commissioner, I think you can put somebody manually into an IR spot, even if they don't have the IR designation.
Right. And you can also just have, there's a button to just change your settings to where they don't have to be on IR to go into an IR spot.
Yeah. You could do that too.
Right. I think commissioners need to be flexible. I mean, that's the most important thing. Like you said, you can allow for ad drops in an emergency situation. You can allow for putting guys on IR spots. But if it's just their bye week, I don't see how you can justify doing something different than if it was just a bye. Like for my leagues, if they say this is their bye week, I'm sorry. I know you hoped to prepare for this. I have a lot of these players. I'm sure we all have a lot of these players. They're great players. So, I'm in a 14-team league. It's a team that I share with my son. Our only quarterback is Ben Roethlisberger. Prior to this, I made a trade offer last night to try and get Cam Newton for a manager that has 3 quarterbacks. I don't think he's going to make the trade because we're playing each other this week. I'm going to have to make a tough call. We have a very good bench. I'm going to have to drop somebody to pick up a quarterback. And it's probably going to be Phillip Rivers or Teddy Bridgewater. That's the scenario that I'm stuck with.
All right. So Heath and I are co-commissioners of a league that Heath's really supposed to be the commissioner of. One of us is going to have to send a note to the league. I have a feeling it's going to be me because Heath is basically giving me all the responsibilities of that league. So
but what are you going to tell people if it's their bye week? Just you have to approach it like that, right?
I'm going to say if it's their bye week, then there will be no changes made, and you're going to have to just adjust. If it's not their bye week, you'll be able to put Titans or Steelers in an IR spot.
Here's my question though, because I don't disagree with that at all. Is the NFL going to announce when they're playing before Sunday?
Here's the NFL's announcement so far. This is the statement from I'm seeing this, the NFL statement on Steelers-Titans game. So the Pittsburgh-Tennessee game scheduled for week 4 will be rescheduled to later this season after 1 additional Titans player and 1 personnel member tested positive for COVID-19 today. An announcement of the new game date will be made shortly. So if we want to stay on the air for another couple minutes, maybe something happens.
I think we've covered the scenarios what people can do.
Right. Yeah. If they announce they've just moved the bye weeks around and this is their bye week, then you don't have to do anything special.
Yeah.
If they don't, then you probably should.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Hope this has been helpful. Make sure you listen to that starter set episode, and you can fast forward to the part where we talk about this game at the beginning of the show. All right, we'll talk to you Friday.
Want more of the Fantasy Football Today podcast and nonstop year-round fantasy advice? It's simple. Hit the subscribe button and hang with us all throughout the year.